بكم أعزائي طلبة بريب 1. النهارده معانا مادة الساينس تحت إشراف ورعاية وزارة التربية والتعليم. النهارده احنا هنكمل بارت 2 من الماتر اند اتس كاركترستكس. النهارده هنبقى بنكمل الدنسيتي اللي اتكلمنا عليها في أول حلقة، وهنبقى taking other physical properties غير الدنسيتي اللي اتكلمنا عليها قبل كده. فتعالوا نشوف مع بعض. اوكي، وزي ما قلت لكم احنا النهارده هنكمل بقيه الفيزيكال بروبرتيز اوف ماتر، وكنا وقفنا عند الدنسيتي. فاكرين لما قلنا ان الدنسيتي هي قد ايه ماس ان 1 كيوبيك سنتيمتر. طيب عايزاكم تشوفوا ناو فيديو. الفيديو ده من بنك المعرفه. It's actually showing you a science activity هتبين لنا الدنسيتي والديفرنسز in the density between all materials. ان كل material ليها certain density.
Do you know that some substances float on the water surface and others sink? This is due to their different densities. Click to start this activity to distinguish between the densities of different materials. In this activity, we will need a coin, an iron nail, an ice cube, a piece of wood, a piece of cork, some drops of oil, and a tank filled with water. We are going to put all the materials in the water tank. We can observe that the ice cube, the wood, the cork, and the oil drops float on the water surface, while the metallic coin and the iron nail sink in the water. We can conclude that the materials which have lower density than water, like the ice cube, wood, cork, and oil drops, will float on the water surface, while the materials which have higher density than water, like the iron nail and the metallic coin, will sink.
Okay, so as was demonstrated in the video, زي ما شفنا ايه اللي حصل. احنا جبنا باول. This bowl was filled with water. وجبنا كذا item, different substances. A piece of wood, a piece of cork, a piece of wood. عملنا ايه؟ رميناهم وبدأنا نobserve. Some of the materials were floating, يعني كانوا على وش المية، و some of them were actually sinking in the water. طيب according to this happened, some properties أو some materials had a density less than the water, و some substances had a density more than the water. طيب أفهم من كده إيه؟ Still I don't understand. عرفتي منين؟ بعمل ايه؟ بمسك كل substance واحسب الدنسيتي بتاعتها. يعني for example كان في coin، بنجيب الماس of the coin نعمله divided by volume، جبت الدنسيتي. لو الدنسيتي بتاعتي لقيتها more than 1 gram per centimeter cube، ده معناه ان هي it will sink. بس لو لقينا حاجة تانية، ان لما حسبنا الدنسيتي بتاعتها لقينا ان الدنسيتي is less than 1 gram per centimeter cube، يبقى ده معناه ان هي it's less than the density of water, so it's gonna float. So the conclusion that we can get from the video is انه اهو substances that have a density less than the density of water is gonna float. يعني ايه؟ يعني لو انت رحت حسبت ال density of this substance ولقيتها less than 1 دي اللي هي ال density of water, this means ان ال substance is gonna float، هتبقى above the water. طيب if the substance have a density more than the density of water، يعني ال density بتاعتها is more than 1، ده معناه ان ال substance دي will sink in the water. that's why زي ما شفنا في الفيديو some substances كانت ال density بتاعتهم less than the density of water، it was floating. بس other substances مثلا زي الكوين او الايرون نيل they were sinking. ليه كانوا تحت؟ عشان ال density بتاعتهم was more than ال density of water. وال density of water don't forget it, it's 1 gram per centimeter cube. خلاص؟ دي الكونكلوجن اللي احنا فهمناها من الاكتيفيتي. طيب تعالي نبص ايه اللايف ابليكيشنز بتاعه ال density. طيب تعالوا اول حاجه، اول بوينت عندنا هي determination the purity of matter. يعني ايه؟ كل matter عنده specific density. فاكرين لما قلنا ان كل substance ليه fixed value أو fixed density. It does not change، ما بتتغيرش. كل substance أو كل matter ليه value of density ثابتة. طيب أنا استفدت في كده إيه؟ Look here بيقول لك إيه؟ Because each matter has its own density, therefore a change in the density value of any substance indicates its impurity. يعني لو أنا لقيت إن السبستنس بتاعت الدنسيتي بتاعت substance معينة changed، ده معناه إن السبستنس دي it's not pure. وإلا لو كانت pure كانت هتبقى الدنسيتي value the same. That's why نقدر نستعمل الموضوع ده إن إحنا نعرف if a substance is pure ولا impure. لو pure هنلاقي ال fixed value بتاعت ال density the same. If not هنلاقيها اتغيرت. It's gonna change. خلاص؟ يبقى this is the first life application. Let's move it to the second one. Water cannot put out petrol fires. بصوا كده. Actually this is a fire. لو بصيتوا هنا الفاير دي caused by petrol. طيب they're saying إن إحنا ما نقدرش put out، ما نقدرش نطفي الفاير دي using water. Why؟ بصوا. Because the density of the oil is less than the density of water. لما حسبنا الدنسيتي بتاعت الأويل لقينا الدنسيتي بتاعت البتروليوم أويل is less than the density of water. يعني less than 1. فاحنا قلنا إن أي حاجة عندها density أقل من 1 هتفلوت. فبصوا it floats over the water and cannot put out fire. فمن هنا عرفنا إن لو في fire caused out by petrol يبقى خلاص we never use the water to put it out. ليه؟ لأن if you put the water الأويل هيروح floating on the top of the water. So the fire خلاص is there. احنا ما حلناهاش. طيب let's move it to the third application. Hydrogen or helium balloons rise up in the air. عارفين بالونات الهيليوم؟ It always rises up. Do you know why؟ If you had كده a moment or a second to think حاولوا تفكروا ليه بالونات اللي بتبقى filled with helium or hydrogen it always rises up in the air. فكروا كده why it floats above. Why? If you thought about it you'll find or you'll know that the density of helium and hydrogen is less than the density of the air. That's why the same idea in the water بس here it's in the air. عشان ال density بتاعت الهيليوم والهيدروجين is way less than the density of the air. عشان كده you always find the balloons up in the sky. They are moving upwards. خلاص that's because of the density. خلاص so these are the 3 life applications that we have on density. طيب يلا نكمل. Here I'm going to show you a video to describe more the life applications that we just talked about. يلا. الفيديو ده من بنك المعرفة و it's really demonstrating. فيلا نشوفه مع بعض.
Did you know that different materials differ in their densities? Click on each card to discover the life applications which depend on the density of materials we use in our daily life. We do not use water to put out petroleum fires because the petroleum oil will float over the water as it has lower density than water. Balloons are filled with hydrogen and helium to allow them to rise upwards because the hydrogen and helium have lower densities than air. We can determine whether the milk is pure or not because the density of the pure milk is 1.03 gram per cubic centimeter. So, by calculating the mass and volume, we can discover whether the milk is pure or mixed with water.
So, زي ما شفنا الفيديو was demonstrating the life applications of density. زي ما شفنا الثلاث حاجات اللي احنا قلنا عليهم. أول حاجة إن احنا we cannot put out petrol fires using water. ليه؟ لأن الwater has density more than the density of oil. صح؟ طيب تاني حاجة عندنا كانت الهيليوم والهيدروجين بالونز. قلنا إن الهيليوم والهيدروجين بالونز they always rise up. ليه؟ الدنسيتي بتاعتهم is less than the density of air. وتالت example كان shown in the video was the purity of milk. مش احنا قلنا ان الدنسيتي بتخلينا نعرف البيوريتي of something؟ فهو كان نقدر يعرفنا البيوريتي of the milk by looking at the value of the density. طيب تعالوا نشوف مع بعض some questions. أول حاجة give reason questions. تعالوا نبص. أول حاجة first question asks you give reason why air is a matter. لو نفتكر احنا قلنا قبل كده matter is anything that has mass and volume. So نفس الحكاية اهو because air اهو because air has the two things that we talked about, mass and occupies certain space. وقلنا occupies a certain space هي volume. So simply the answer is أيوة air is a matter. Why? عشان it has both mass and volume. طيب تعالوا نبص للnext question. It tells you water isn't used to put out petrol fires. يعني you cannot put out a fire caused by petrol using water. Why is that? يلا take a second كده to think. We just said it. Simply عشان the density of petrol oil is less than the density of water. So basically إيه اللي هيحصل؟ البترول هيفلوت هيبقى above the water surface. So water doesn't put out the petrol fire. خلاص؟ دي كانت واحدة من الابليكيشنز. ف this is a question on it. بيسألك give reason أنا ليه ما أقدرش use the water to put out البترول fires. طيب next هنا الquestion بيقول لك what is meant by. طيب what is meant by لما أقول لك ال density of water is 1 gram per centimeter cube. زي ما اتفقنا by the way ال density of the 1 gram per centimeter cube دي density ثابتة للwater يعني ده fixed value it's a constant value. طيب ليه؟ يعني أو what is meant by يعني إيه الكلام ده؟ It is that the mass of 1 cubic centimeter of water equals 1 gram. يبقى في 1 gram of particles بتاعت الwater في ال 1 centimeter cube. تمام؟ طيب يبقى احنا كل ده كنا بنتكلم على الفيزيكال بروبرتي بتاعتنا اللي هي الدنسيتي. خلاص؟ طيب تعالوا بقى نخش على واحدة تانية. It's another physical property. What is this physical property called? It's called the melting point. يلا let's know more about the melting point. أول حاجة you need to remember something. إن matter that we talked about always exists in 3 states. States means form يعني it exists أو موجود in 3 different forms. إيه 3 different forms بتاعتنا؟ solid, liquid and gas. طيب solid زي التيبل it's a solid. liquid زي الwater. gas زي الاير اللي حواليا air. خلاص؟ So basically the solid, the liquid and the gas they are all matter. دول ال different states of matter. طيب مفروض ان كل state ممكن تتغير للتانية. يعني ايه اللي انا بقوله ده؟ يعني ممكن solid state تتغير ل liquid state. ساعتها بنقول this change is called melting. طيب عايزاكم now to imagine melting in your life. Basically أول حاجة لو جبت ice cubes طلعت من الفريزر ice cubes what will happen؟ Basically هنلاقي إن الice cubes دي it's gonna melt. هتتغير من الsolid ice cubes هتبدأ to change to liquid. This is what we call melting. طيب another example. إيه ال other example؟ لو عندي ice cream when you're having an ice cream الايس كريم ده بيبقى solid. أول ما نسيبه شوية بس يبدأ يتغير to be a liquid. This is also called melting. عندي solid اتغير لliquid. طيب بيقولك إن ال temperature at which the matter begins to melt is called melting point. يعني ال temperature درجة الحرارة اللي أول ما الماتر ده يبدأ يملت يبدأ يسيح it is called the melting point. خلاص؟ ودي الفيزيكال بروبرتي اللي احنا بنتكلم عليها. يبقى one more time ايه هي الميلتنج بوينت؟ It's the certain temperature. ال temperature at which الماتر ده begins يبدأ على طول إنه melt to start melting. طيب بصوا كده. Some substances have high melting point. يعني إيه كلمة high melting point؟ High melting point يعني they need large or high temperatures in order to melt. زي مين كده؟ الميتالز iron, gold, aluminum. These are substances that actually have a high melting point. Again, يعني إيه عندهم high melting point؟ يعني they need high temperatures عشان to start melting. On the other hand بقى بصوا you have other substances that have low melting point. وقلنا يعني إيه low melting point؟ يعني they need low temperatures in order to melt. أو in other words they melt easily أو they melt fast. زي إيه؟ بصوا ice cubes here, butter, wax الشمع. All of these are substances that actually melt quickly. Why? عشان they need low temperatures in order to melt. فلازم نبقى دايما عارفين إنه some substances have high melting point و some substances have low melting point. طيب اوكي عندنا life applications للmelting point. عندنا life applications للmelting point. بصوا كده على this picture. It's a picture of a cooking pot or a cooking pan. طيب this cooking pot is made up of aluminium أو stainless steel. طيب why? If I ask you مثلا give reason why this cooking pot is made out of aluminium أو stainless steel. Why? This is because الألمنيوم والstainless steel they have high melting points. Imagine كده if you're using a cooking pot والcooking pot دي معمولة من حاجة low melting point. It's gonna melt. So imagine that. Basically we make the cooking pots using aluminium أو stainless steel because they have high melting points. طيب we also use gold, copper in making jewels. Jewels يعني jewelry. This is jewelry. They are made out of gold and copper. Why? عشان they both have high melting points. يعني they need very high temperatures in order to melt. Okay. تاني حاجة nickel chrome alloy. هنتكلم ونقول دلوقتي يعني ايه alloy which is used in making heating coils. طيب نيكل كروم ده اسم الالوي. ايه هو الالوي؟ الالوي ده is actually a mixture of two substances together. as you can see here هو معمول من ايه الالوي؟ نيكل وكروميوم. خلاص؟ we call it nickel chrome alloy. طيب بنستعمل في ايه النيكل كروم alloy؟ we use it to make heating coils. Something to heat. imagine we're using a heating coils. They should have a high melting point عشان we are heating here. So we need something that bears the temperature, something that keeps its shape without melting. So these were the life applications on the melting point. طيب تعالوا نشوف مع بعض ال questions on the board. Okay, so تعالوا نحل بقى ال questions. طيب أول questions اللي هي ال give a reason. طيب نقرا السؤال. Give a reason why ال cooking pots أو ال cooking pans are made up of aluminium or stainless steel. طيب نفكر ليه الألمنيوم pots معمولة من ألمنيوم أو stainless steel؟ Basically عشان we said that aluminium and stainless steel both have a high melting point. So أهو because the aluminium and the stainless steel both have a high melting point يعني they need high temperatures to melt. طيب تاني question why البالونز filled with hydrogen أو helium rise upwards ليه بتطلع لفوق؟ We also said this. ليه؟ عشان ال density of hydrogen و helium is less than ال density of air. طيب question 3 A piece of wood floats on the water surface while a piece of lead sinks in. زي ما اتفقنا أي حاجة عندها density less than the density of water is gonna float. So here the wood has a density smaller than that of water, while the density of lead is more than the density of water. That's why it's gonna sink. Okay, next, more questions. Question complete. يلا نقرأ. The density of 20 grams of pure iron is what the density of 2 grams from it. Basically, عايزاكم تفتكروا احنا قلنا ان الدنسيتي دي it's a constant, it's a fixed value، يعني مش بيتغير. فايذر لو انا مره الماس كان 20 grams of pure iron ومره ثانيه كان 2 grams, still the density is gonna be equal. خلاص اهو ال density of 20 gram of pure iron is the same or it's equal to the density of 2 grams from it. طيب questions ثانيه. choose. Now by putting a piece of metal. البيس of metal الماس بتاعها 44 والفوليوم بتاعها 5 سنتيمتر كيوب. طيب knowing that the density of water اللي هي 1 gram per centimeter cube اللي احنا اتفقنا عليه. يلا let's choose. طيب it's either gonna float على ال water surface أو suspend in the water or sink in the water أو no correct answer. طيب عشان أحل السؤال ده you need to calculate the density بتاعة ال piece of metal. زي ما احنا فاكرين ال density is mass over volume. فاحنا هنعمل ايه؟ هنعمل ال density قلنا is mass over volume. الماس بتاعي is 44 هنعمله divided by the volume اللي هو 5. ف 44 divided by 5 هيديني value that equals 8.8. طيب هاجي اقارن ال 8.8 دي بالدنسيتي بتاعت الواتر اللي هي 1. مين اكتر؟ definitely ال 8.8. فهتبقى ال 8.8 more than the density of the water اللي هي ال 1. So it's gonna sink in the water. That's why we choose here the answer C. It sinks عشان ال 8.8 is bigger than the water. طيب next question. يلا. All of the following substances have low melting point except يعني هو هنا عايز الحاجة الوحيدة اللي هنا اللي عندها high melting point. Wax لا it has a low melting point. Iron yes the answer is iron. الايرون هو اللي هنا الوحيد اللي عنده high melting point. Butter and ice برضو زي الواكس we said they have low melting points. طيب another form of questions. لو جيت قلت لك write the scientific term when the temperature at which the substance change from solid to liquid. عندي solid الsolid ده بيتغير to liquid. We said that this is the term. It's called melting point. دي ال temperature اللي السبستنس بيتغير فيها من solid to liquid. طيب ايه الترم بتاع الالوي او the name of the alloy اللي we use in making heating coil؟ قلنا it's called nickel chrome alloy. يعني هو alloy معمول من حاجتين نيكل وكروم. اوكي السؤال water is used to put out petrol fires. زي ما احنا قلنا no it's not used in putting out petrol fires. طيب هنا the solid substance change to liquid by heating. ازاي حاجة بتملت ازاي؟ when we heat it. وكده نكون خلصنا الابيسود بتاعت النهارده. اتكلمنا عن ايه؟ اتكلمنا على بقيه الفيزيكال بروبرتيز اللي هم كانوا الدنسيتي والميلتنج بوينت، وحلينا some questions about it، وشفنا الاكتيفيتي بتاعه الدنسيتي. اشوفكم الحلقه الجايه ونكمل الفيزيكال والكيميكال بروبرتيز في الماتر. باي.